No. Oh,
We're gonna pass our sign.
Can you pass one of each?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you got. Yeah.
Yeah. This is an extra, Nicole.
We should probably get going. And how's it Susquehanna's coming along? It's really cool.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
It's 4:30, so we're gonna try and get started. Alright. Alright, so just so that we're all organized, members of the public, if you haven't signed in, there's a sign-in sheet just outside the door on your way out. Just please remember to sign in. LPC members, there are printed resources on the table. Just grab one of everything out there and make sure that you sign in. I think we're going to send a sign-in sheet. If you haven't gotten it, please look for it. So, we have a packed agenda today. We'll start off with the welcome, the preamble. The mayor will give the preamble and a recap from public engagement. Vision goal strategies, which you all received ahead of time. Summary of proposed projects. Talk about evaluation criteria and match. Discuss a boundary expansion and working groups. And then next steps, and the last 15 minutes we will reserve for public. So, Mayor, would you like to offer the preamble, please?
I'm sorry.
The preamble.
Yes. As you can see up there, everyone on our local planning committee is reminded of our obligation, and I think most of you have completed your recusal forms, and they're kind of blank at this point. But as we subsequently go through any projects, if you have any financial or vested interest, it is your obligation to reveal it at that time. And it's not just you personally, it could be a family member, or maybe you're investing in a project, etc. And so that will need to come up when any projects are being discussed. And I think we reviewed that before. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we also have another slide.
At this time, are there any recusals?
The Breeze project, 143.
I have one.
Veterans Club.
I'm sorry, did you realize that? No, did you see this?
The Willow Brook project.
Sorry, what was that?
The Willow Brook project.
I saw it.
Anybody else? Okay, good updates, you can. Excellent.
All right, so quick public engagement update. We had a pretty successful workshop number 1. The summary has been posted to the website under meeting materials. So please look for that and let others know that that is uploaded on the website. Oh, I love it. We did get 54 participants. It was an open house event. In summary, the challenges are pretty similar to the SWOT analysis that this LPC performed at the first meeting. People identified parking and old buildings, housing, the lack of housing. The prevalence of baseball is on both of these. It's both a challenge and an asset. So this is just a little, the larger the word is, the more often it was mentioned by the public. And then assets, the community is a big one, the businesses, the business community, the restaurants, the library, and so a lot of happy, positive words in that one as well. But I do encourage you guys to review the summary that's posted on the website and was sent to you guys. When we talk about priorities, a priority that people identified was housing. And in terms of the vision, some of the bigger words were community, initiatives, continue, I think is interesting. That's a good kind of word, I think. Year-round, and again, these are all words that I think we've also identified through our SWOT analysis as an LPC. So public workshop number 2 is coming up fast. We have scheduled that for Wednesday, September 13th from 12 to 4 p.m. It will be a similar open house style workshop to the last one. It will be held at the Firehouse on Chestnut Street. The objective is to gain feedback on proposed projects, vision, and goals. And so we're working on getting the materials for that ready. What will be important for that public workshop is that this LPC feels comfortable with the projects that are being presented to the public, and we'll go through what that looks like today. There was also a survey that went out for the couple of weeks as well. We received 162 responses. Some of the key findings are that retail options are missing from downtown Cooperstown. Housing is missing from downtown Cooperstown, particularly affordable housing and apartments. And parking and a lack of shopping and things to do geared towards residents is also needed. So again, I'm not sure that there are any surprises there, but just further evidence that the LPC is certainly on the right track there. The LPC's feedback and the public's feedback, as well as the goals of the New York Forward program itself. We have drafted vision, goals, and objectives. You did receive these. I'd like to kind of go through them quickly unless there are any really big issues. Please always feel free to email me in writing, or feel free to email the LPC to share your thoughts, and we can always have conversations over email about any changes that need to be made to this. So as far as the draft, the Village of Cooperstown, which is a national destination, will build on prior dynamic downtown improvements to support a sustainable, robust, year-round economy that addresses the needs of workers, visitors, and families for generations to come. Cooperstown's strategic investment plan will strengthen access to scenic Otsego Lake, encourage new housing, establish fun, safe, and accessible connections through the public realm, enhance the quality of life for all residents, and create a memorable experience for visitors. Central to this vision is the strategic development and conversion of buildings, infrastructure, and amenities to foster a resilient and equitable future and preserve the strong sense of place that is at the heart of the Cooperstown community.
Well done.
Cooperstown in a nutshell. one goal that discusses housing with some strategies. The goal is to create a diversity of housing options for the varying needs of communities. And to do that, we would look to develop diverse and affordable housing options that provides residential opportunities for a broad range of income levels, encourage senior housing to provide opportunities for seniors to downsize, and expand housing opportunities by rehabilitating upper-story residential units in mixed-use buildings and converting single-family homes to multiple units where appropriate. For businesses, the goal is to diversify businesses to support the needs of Cooperstown's residents and visitors and provide year-round interest. We would support the development of co-working spaces for remote employees to have a place to gather as well as socialize, support the development of micro-enterprises and small businesses, organized businesses and nonprofit organizations to extend hours and seasons of operation and therefore build demand for a year-round economy. Integrate service sector businesses and creative enterprises within commercial areas, especially in the free and commercial districts, kind of the upper Main area. Continue to develop a mix of uses appropriate for the Railroad Avenue Business District, and market Otsego Lake as a recreational destination within the study area and encourage recreational outfitters to locate within the New York Forward area. As far as connectivity, this is a two-parter. The goal is to connect people to places by creating a vibrant, safe, and accessible public realm. To do that, we would improve the pedestrian connection from the village's downtown to its waterfront, implement streetscape and wayfinding improvements to enhance the pedestrian experience and support safe and enjoyable pedestrian circulation. Emphasize pedestrian access and safety for Fowler Way, Pioneer Lane, and Hoffman Lane through design, infrastructure improvements, and policies. Subsequent to that, exploring solutions to user conflicts on Pioneer and Hoffman Lanes, and studying the feasibility of encouraging no-through traffic on Pioneer and Hoffman Lanes so that pedestrians are prioritized. And to continue, placemaking strategies should be promoted and future land uses that elevate Railroad Avenue District and its unique neighborhood identity as a mixed-use gateway to downtown, really elevating that as kind of a unique destination in itself. Enhancing the pedestrian infrastructure at the intersections of Railroad Ave, Glen Ave, and Main Street. Market and utilize Leatherstocking Street as a direct pedestrian connection from the Red Lot to Doubleday Field, and continuing to market the trolley as an efficient means of transportation and considering additional or alternative trolley routes that reduce the ride time between major stops during the busiest times of the year. Last one, sustainability, last but not least. Promote a more environmentally sustainable downtown through public infrastructure improvements and by encouraging decarbonization. Continue contributing to the stewardship of Otsego Lake, water quality through the incorporation of green infrastructure and native landscape plantings within the public realm. Further enhance the role of Otsego Lake to downtown activity and draw attention to educate about the watershed. Pursue development of an educational pier at the end of Lakefront Park. Encourage property owners to install energy efficiency improvements, such as electrifying building heating and cooling systems, improving insulation, and replacing windows. Installing educational signage and infrastructure, such as stamped stormwater grates, and information explaining the positive impacts of green infrastructure and other visible improvements to the local environment. Continue to install EV charging stations in public parking areas, and continue efforts to reduce traffic congestion by encouraging pedestrian and bicycle movement throughout the New York Forward area. Are there any questions or comments on the vision, goals, and strategies? We'll take comments from the public at the end. All right, so let's jump into it. The summary of the proposed projects that we have received. Just as a reminder, the projects can fall into one of 4 different bins of funding. New development and rehabilitation of existing buildings should be or lead to capital investments and should have visible and functional impact on the downtown. Public improvements include things like streetscapes, transportation improvements, trails, wayfinding, signage, really anything that's in the public realm that contributes to the revitalization of downtown. As far as branding and marketing, these are one-time expenses that develop materials and signage to target residents, investors, visitors, and so forth. And then the small project fund is a fund for smaller downtown projects. And those might look like facade improvements, commercial and mixed-use building rehabilitation and renovations that may not rise to the level of this visible and functional impact on downtown, this catalytic kind of visible impact. And just as a reminder, we'll jump into it in a little bit, but the small project fund is a separate fund that would solicit projects once that fund is established. So this process, by soliciting the call for projects, we receive projects that demonstrate the need for the small project fund, but those projects would then have to apply for the small project fund once it was set up. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So totals, in terms of public projects, the village submitted 7 projects for a total funding request of $4.5 million and a total project cost of $4.6 million. For new development and rehabilitation projects, those are really private projects. We got 7 that are comfortably new development and rehabilitation, looking at about $6.4 million asking and $17.7 in total project costs or impact. And then we categorize 19 projects as what we're calling potential small projects or miscellaneous projects. And that's really where the LPC's eye will be really beneficial. Some of these projects may fall off in terms of not being eligible. Some of them may have a larger catalytic effect that we have to just work with the project sponsor to understand and parse out. And so that's about 19 projects. We know some of them their eligibility is a little bit questionable. I'll point that out later. So for a total of 33 projects, totaling project cost of $24.6 million and a total funding request of $12.8 million. So we are very comfortably, have a good amount to work with here. You can see this little note above. New York Forward's guidance states that for a community like Cooperstown, we're aiming for approximately $6 to $8 million of total project requests. So we're looking good. So this map shows the projects by tentative project types at the moment, understanding that the LPC will be vetting these and the categorizations may change. So that map is also, part of that map is up here, and then you all have the map showing private and public projects.
I will just add that we're going to keep this at a very high level as we go through these projects. We're not diving into project financials, and this is just to give you information about what was presented, to give you an idea of the types of projects and what was proposed.
Yeah, we're really working off of what was submitted in the forms. So again, just that high level stuff. So for public projects, improvements to Doubleday Field were proposed. The proposal is to regrade the field, improve the drainage system, invest in new irrigation, install base anchors and update the netting at the historic grandstand. And this is really about improving drainage issues so that the field can be brought up to professional standards. For Fowler Lane, this project would be looking at creating a pedestrian and vehicle-safe pathway along Fowler Way. The improvement would permit safe ADA-compliant access to the ramp and seating at the first base bleachers, including wayfinding as well. Some grant funding has been requested for this project, but we're looking at potentially $720,000 to $750,000 for this project. The Grove Street pedestrian improvements was also submitted by the village, looking at improving the sidewalks along Main Street, and along Grove Street, to improve that facilitation from the red lot, coming down Upper Main Street. The total project cost is estimated to be about $144,000. The village has requested about $135,000 from New York Forward. Hoffman Lane improvements. This project would transform Hoffman Lane by improving the pedestrian design and managing stormwater. The village does have a site plan design and rendering prepared by their engineers using the funds from another grant. So it would really add decorative lamp posts, some pavers, and open up that view to Lakefront Park by actually reconfiguring the parking as well, so that when you're looking down Hoffman Lane, you're not looking at a parking lot, it's actually going to be like an entrance way. The request for that is $1.2 million. The total project cost is estimated to be about $1.3 million, and that is a recent estimate that we received. The Lakefront Park viewing platform is also a proposed public project. The village is proposing to construct a platform for fishing and scenic enjoyment to provide greater access to Lake Otsego. Just a block away from the business district, the platform will provide an ADA compliant pathway for visitors and residents to fish, assemble, or enjoy the scenic beauty of the lake. The railing is going to be designed to be visually unobtrusive and will incorporate signage with historic and environmental information relevant to this location. The request is $448,449,000 with a total project cost of about $474,000 estimated. Pioneer Alley improvements was also submitted. So this project, again, built off of the stormwater studies Hoffman and Pioneer were looked at under the same grant and for stormwater purposes. It proposes to improve stormwater infrastructure in Pioneer Alley by creating infiltration infrastructure, repaving, and adding lighting. We have a note here that this project may not be ready at this time, but may qualify as a pipeline project, something to put in the strategic investment plan as something that can be catalytic, but needs to be thought through a little bit more. And the reason for that is there's a lot of private building interest that I think will really benefit the public pedestrian sphere of Pioneer Alley. And the feedback that we've gotten about Pioneer Alley is that the pedestrian comfort really needs to be emphasized in that area. And so there's a lot of engineering that has to be done on the stormwater end, but I think there's also a lot of, there's placemaking and a lot of public buying that needs to happen as well. So just putting a little pin on that one. Upper Main Street wayfinding. This is a project that proposes to activate Upper Main Street from the red lot to the Otsego County campus by installing wayfinding signage that's similar to that's already around the village. And really kind of, again, continuing that thread from Lower Main Street to Upper Main Street so that people at the red lot have something to follow as little breadcrumbs as they come down. The request is for $52,000, and the project cost is about that, $52,000 to $53,000. So now we're getting into the new development and rehabilitation, or the private fact projects. The first project is 103 Main Street. The proposal is for the demolition and reconstruction of about 24,000 square feet of space on the second through fourth floors into 21 apartment rental units. They would be a mix of studio 1 and 2 bedroom apartments for long-term rental. It also includes new elevator mechanicals, and the exterior is proposed to be refreshed. The request for this is $1.3 million. The total project cost is $6.5 million. 134 Main Street is a similar project. It would look at completely rehabilitating the vacant second and third floors of the building into 4 two-bedroom apartments for long-term rental, and also make significant exterior renovations to repair the decaying woodwork, as you can see in that photo. The New York Forward request is for $250,000, and the project cost is estimated to be about $700,000. The Willowbrook residential project is at 22 Glen as well as Grove. The proposal is to demolish 2 existing buildings that are on that lot, on 2 lots, and merge those lots, develop 1 residential apartment building and 1 townhouse building consisting of 9 one-bedroom apartment units and 4 townhouse units. And the developers will be seeking passive house certification on that project. The request is for $2 million, and the total project cost is $4.7 million. Railroad Inn expansion project is located at 28 Railroad Ave. That's the inn. The proposal is to invest in the construction of 3 freestanding long-term rental residential units comprising approximately 900 square feet of efficiency space. The New York Forward request is for $150,000. The total project cost is $450,000. I will say I have not looked at the village zoning to understand whether this project would be permitted, so that's something that we would have to kind of dive into. Similarly, the Wood Bat Factory flagship store, that's the batting cages at Doubleday Field. This is a proposal to actually demolish the existing building and rebuild to expand the use of the batting cages to include food, beverage, and retail sales. The new use will be expanded from a single story to 2 stories and will be designed to complement Doubleday Field and neighboring properties. This is a rendering that was provided by the applicant. The New York Forward request is $2 million, and the total project cost was $4.3 estimated. So then we have 53 Pioneer Street. This has actually been brought forward by a nonprofit organization, Smithy Gallery. The project totals 3,000 square feet and includes a full restoration of the interior of 3 floors and the facade of the building. It will restore a historic building to its former distinction and provide a flexible use, shared community space for patrons and visitors to the village. It will be a year-round facility, which has the potential to be used in a multitude of ways, and the studios will be open to the public, offering workshops and classes for all ages. I will add that it would be the 3rd building in the Smithy's kind of arts campus back there. And so when you go through the Smithy Gallery and you're in the garden, you would see that restored building. The Smithy Gallery, I understand, does not have a full year of use because it's not heated or cooled. And so this would allow the organization to do that. The request is $424,000. The project cost is estimated to be $424,000. We are working with a cost estimator to confirm those numbers. And then the Pioneer Valley Microbrewery is proposed for Pioneer Alley. It's a proposal to develop a brewery in an underutilized building with primary access on Pioneer Alley. It includes exterior improvements as well as an interior conversion of the building into a brewery where the tap room would be at the Pratt Hotel. So the structures, the equipment would be inside this building that you see here. The anticipated benefits include activating businesses in and surrounding Pioneer Alley throughout the year, as well as beautifying and activating a vacant building in a popular pedestrian location. The New York Forward request is $300,000. The total project cost is $582,000 estimated. So does anybody have thoughts or questions, clarifications before I move on?
That's the sum of projects submitted to date.
Yes.
So the kind of like, we still have work to do to work with all those projects to get more information. There can be modifications and clarifications as far as elements and, but that's kind of the high level.
That's the public and the private. Now we're gonna get into kind of the miscellaneous projects that will work. And that's what the working session is going to, the next working session is going to focus on that I sent the doodle poll. We'll get to that. But again, really looking at these projects here.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
On one of the projects, you talked about a passive housing application, or what is that?
Passive House is it's a certification for buildings that are built to a specific rating. And so, Josh, do you want to explain?
It's an extremely rigorous building standard.
Okay,
So it's
thank
usually
you.
about.
That's all I need to
Highly
know.
energy efficient.
Yes.
That's all I need to know.
That's what it is.
So now we're getting into the small project fund, so we just wanted to preface with some basics about small project funds. New York Board is allocating $300,000 towards a small project fund that the village would sponsor and work with the state to actually administer. There would be a separate call for projects once that fund was set up. The strategic investment plan has to demonstrate the need for the small project fund. I think the number of projects that you've received that would fit into that category does demonstrate that need. I think they're also all very similar in what they're looking to do, which I think also furthers the discussion of why this is an important program to have. Eligible activities for the small project fund itself includes building renovations like facade and storefronts, exterior building, upper story residential changes, so a kitchen renovation or those types of upgrades, HVAC and other permanent building improvements. Signs and awnings and some small business assistance can also be covered under that, but you'll see on the next slide, we're really going to be looking at this building renovations section. Yes.
So this is 300 on top of the 4.5 million, or is this part of the 4.5?
Yeah.
Part of, it's one of the projects essentially.
So this would be the maximum that the village can request for the small
Within
project
the
fund
4.5.
is 300,000. The small project fund is administered through HCR, Homes and Community Renewal, and they have a 25% minimum match requirement. We'll see from the projects that have been submitted that may be more suitable for a small project fund. They've been all submitted in their project a 25% match. So one of the things that will happen going forward is if a project is determined by the LPC to be funneled more into that small project fund category, the bridge will go back to those project sponsors and let them know that 25% match, because we want to have that. They're okay with that before we include them in that request.
So people put in zero match have a chance to qualify if they agree to 25%.
Essentially, yes, because at some point they're going to have to do that anyway. And the other thing to be clear about is that this is just, our sort of initial assessment of what might end up being funneled into the small project fund. Some of these projects, and we'll get into this as an LPC, some of these projects may be elevated beyond the small project fund. And the way to think about it is basically if they have, whether or not they have a significant catalytic impact on downtown themselves, or as part of more of a group. Let's say, if there's several $40,000 facade improvement projects, maybe if there's 6 or 7 of them, they have a big impact on downtown, but any one in particular, they have a smaller impact on downtown, that those would be sort of fun.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the minimum match requirement is 25%.
Minimum,
Right.
it's locally
So that
administered.
the LPC can require more than that.
They can recommend more, but it'll be a separate local group that administers that project
Okay,
in the future. And they can set, requirements as needed, which brings the point. These projects, if they are submitted as, sort of proof of the need for a small project fund, they still have to reapply. They're not guaranteed to get funding. They still have to go through that, and it's, again, a, sort of open call, competitive basis for that funds, which also means people who have not applied, they may be interested in something similar, could then apply in the future for that fund.
Do we have the ability to modify that 300 and make it 500 if we felt that?
If there's a local match, you can't, if there's an organization that matches it, yes, but the request from your board can't go back.
I was gonna say, just to clarify, as is administered later, could that administering group limit what awards are given? So, for example, all small project funds, maximum award is 25,000 in a.
Yes, they set
So-
minimum
so
and
they-
maximum,
they
they
could-
can say, we're not gonna fund more than $75,000,
Right.
which obviously that's not including the match of the person, and we're not gonna fund projects below $20,000, that's a.
Try to maximize the
Yeah.
dollar amounts that way.
Right.
So we'll jump in. So this is again a two-part slide. So this is a list of projects that didn't quite rise above this miscellaneous kind of small projects grant. But you'll see they vary extremely widely in the funding request. And so when you think of a small project, again, it's not necessarily the amount of money that makes it a small project, it's kind of the impact that it has in terms of the community impact. So I also have some little exclamation icons here, and that is just identifying that certain projects we would need to vet a little bit more to make sure that they're eligible. HCR may take issue with projects like with private membership organizations receiving this funding, and so there are certain criteria that we'll have to run through HCR and through those applicants to make sure that those projects are eligible. And you can see most of them include facade, a lot of them include insulation, HVAC, just general kind of decarbonization efforts. And of course, all of these buildings are extremely old, and so just updates in general that will improve the life of the building. Window replacements and that kind of thing. And so on this page, you can see again the kind of wide variety of total costs that we're looking at. A lot of these again are exterior facade. These last three appear to not meet the eligibility requirements. Sidewalk rehabilitation, improvements to surface parking, those are really not, eligible under the New York Board program policies. And then 55 Grove Street is not contiguous to the study area. It's not adjacent or anything like that, and so it would be really difficult, I think, to expand the boundary to incorporate that with a rational basis. We will get to the boundary expansion, so we can have that discussion. And like I said, we really do plan to further vet these in an executive session with you all. I believe most of you have responded to the doodle poll, so we'll talk about that later as well. So the match discussion and potential evaluation criteria. So where the rubber meets the road here. So again, there is no programmatic minimum match requirements for the New York Forward program. The small project fund, like Stefan said, does require a 25% minimum match. But the LPC can set matching requirements as part of this planning process for public, private, and nonprofit backed projects. We have some state agency reference points for your information. These are the matches that are required of different agency grant programs. The typical downtown revitalization initiative is 60-40. Empire State Development is 90-10. New York State Maine is 75-25. And so on. Interesting in Restore New York is 90-10 or $75,000 per housing unit or $150,000 per affordable unit that's proposed. You can see on your the very large spreadsheets that you all have, there's a small box in the lower corner that shows these project matches that are offered already. So again, this is just based off the project forms that were submitted. We have not called project applicants or anything like that. We haven't really vetted whether the match is, the proposed match are eligible funds even. And so the public is, projects are offering about 3%, private is 65% at this point, the small project is 13%, and there's only one nonprofit project that's not proposing a match.
Just to be clear, in the state reference points, the second number is the match. So that's the leverage number. First number is the funding, with the exception of Empire State Development, I think is reversed. So that's usually 10% funded and 90% private. Essentially, they fund 10%.
Please note that.
There's slightly
Right.
It's 80-20 and a 10% equity, yeah. So this is kind of like a starting point for discussion and just provide some clarification. The public projects that were presented, many of them have, the village has also put forward grant applications, which those grant applications, if awarded, are looking at a 50-50 match for a lot of them. So it changes what would potentially be needed from here forward, but this is where they're at today without those grant sources in place. They would be able to leverage those grant sources should those become available. The private, we can have those conversations later, but what we have to decide today is where we want to set those thresholds so we can have these conversations with all of the applicants that came in. We need to understand from your perspective what you think those minimum should be if necessary. We know that small project minimum needs to be 25, but we can adjust any of these numbers.
So I'll throw out a starting point.
Fabulous.
That we can discuss from there, but I think my recommendation would be no match requirement for municipal projects, 50% for private projects, and 25% for nonprofit projects. And I think setting the match requirements at those kind of levels will allow a lot more of these projects, if there is private investment available, to move forward. And I think that's the whole purpose of this, right, is to transform Main Street in Cooperstown with this $4.5 million. And I think by setting those kind of requirements, we can make sure that that happens.
I'll just quickly add to that you have the benefit of being the third Mohawk Valley Airport, third LPC meeting to happen, and two previous in different directions. Sharon Springs, Nicole set a guideline, so basically they're going to, it's part of the evaluation, it's not a requirement, but they're going to look more favorably on projects that meet a target of 40?
30 for private,
30 for private.
25 for public, 30 for nonprofit, and 50 for small projects.
So that is their guideline, it's not a requirement, so you can still apply, but they're saying you're gonna be more competitive if you do this.
Yep.
And then Dolgeville set a match requirement of, I believe, 25% for private projects and 0% for.
0 for public, right? And both had good discussion points in the sense of where the recommendation should be. The question is, if you require more match, can you then have the funds benefit more projects? On the flip side, others presented, if you require a higher match, are you eliminating the feasibility of projects? And so making sure that you're still able to have that catalytic investment and not lose those investments as well. So it's one of those pieces that we have to weigh. And as Sharon Springs presented it, it was the preferred match level, but it wasn't going to necessarily throw them out if they couldn't quite make it as part of the process.
Also worth mentioning that, as Adriana mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of requests, which in a sense gives you more leverage because you have more room to work with. If the projects drop out, you have a lot of competitive projects in the bucket, or shall we say more than Sharon Springs and Belfort. You have more competitive projects, so you essentially have a little bit more wiggle room, to the point that Nicole mentioned. If you lose, a couple $1 million in projects, you still have your work cut out for you in submitting a slate of, $8 million. So with that,
And
does
it
anyone
said
have
50, 0, 25, did I get that right?
50 private, 25 nonprofit, 0 for municipal.
And
And
25,
I would do the 50-50 on a small project fund as well. Realizing that we're not determining, that would be my recommendation.
okay, so 50.
Part of it is we're trying to encourage capital investment too. And so, that's a big thing. And so if we can take the 4.5 million and leverage, I know right now, the total projects for 24 million. I don't know that we get that, but, if there's a way to take that 4.5 million and get 12 to 15 million worth of, money spent here, I think that's fantastic. So I would say private projects, I would say at least 50%. Would grants qualify on public projects
As match,
as match?
absolutely.
Because that would really help. If we could get some grants for the public projects to get, what did Sharon Springs do, 30%?
For their hub, like they did, public was 25 for them.
Something like that. And I think it's nice how they did the preferred, where it wasn't a hard line where projects were completely left out, because, as we look at projects, we know the town, we know which ones are probably more important than others in terms of really capturing what this is all about. So having preferred, I think that's not a bad way to do it.
I echo the preferred. I think that it really allows some flexibility where we might want it, and drawing hard lines in the sand sometimes don't benefit for the bigger picture. I think it's interesting that grant money can be applied as a match for public funds, and I think that that's something that should be considered also.
the asterisk of that is it's not necessary, so the village has applied for grants for some of these projects that are outstanding, yet to be awarded. It's not a guarantee that those are received. So it's sort of a, risk, I guess you could say.
Right.
It could come through and it could not come through.
What happens?
There's nothing to say, by the way, that you can't set a minimum match and then for higher preferred match.
What happens if a project gets awarded and doesn't happen? What happens to that money, like 2 years from now?
Let's not worry about it right now, but the short answer is that that's one of the reasons why you submit significantly over the requested amount, the award amount of $4.5 million. So there's essentially that, let's say $8 million slate goes to the state, those are selected, and there's $4 million left over. If something doesn't pan out, those are on the list to, step into the shoes.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the higher leverage projects that are gonna be transformational are going to be more attractive to the state out of the large slate we saw.
It's certainly one of the factors.
So I guess, my point there is, if you have businesses that are not normally playing in this state funding space, to encourage a larger match may make that project more attractive to the state, because we're gonna submit a stack of projects north of 4.5 million and then the state is gonna pick which ones they wanna fund. So by setting that match a little higher, we're encouraging them to be more competitive when that gets to the state level. Like I'm not trying to be mean. I just want people to put the best application forward. So.
And encouraging a match, I mean, it also, if someone's not willing to fund the project, it may not be as worthwhile. It's kind of like if you're gonna give something free, it's like, sure, but you know, how much does it mean? And so encouraging a match kind of puts some skin in the game.
I'm okay with the preferred. I think that sends a message, like, that sends a message. And if you're resubmitting an application or like lower than that, that says something as well.
So Josh, you were 50 for private, what were your other numbers?
I think it was 30 and then 30 for nonprofits too.
30 for nonprofits and keep the 25 for small projects?
I'd be fine with 50 on the small projects. I mean, looking at the number of small projects and the fact that we only have $300,000, we don't have the ability to raise that number. That kind of, let's decide if it's.
So that would be a again, you wouldn't be eliminating anyone per se, and you could recommend that in the narrative for the small projects. But again, the HCR minimum is 25%, so that whatever capacity the village has afterwards, we'll take that into consideration.
Carolyn, you started to say.
Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, sorry.
No, I was just agreeing that we need to really look at the preferred as opposed to the end, and then, like Sharon Springs and like has been proposed, looking at some level for all areas.
So you would throw out numbers and commit to something.
I would stick with the 50 for private and for the small, and again, understanding that somewhere in the 20 to 30 range for municipal and nonprofit.
I think from the nonprofit side, we should go a little bit lower, give them more of an opportunity.
So what numbers do you present?
I think 50 for private, 30 for small, and 10 or 15 for nonprofit.
Same for public?
I'm open. So
Go around.
You don't have to hear from you all, but we want to.
We do. We're gonna reach consensus tonight, so.
I'll say, understand where you're going with the nonprofit. My counter to that would be that a nonprofit needs to have ongoing revenue streams and support in order to be successful. And if they can't meet a 25% match for the project, I would question whether the nonprofit is sustainable. So that would be my, like, are you gonna invest this money and then they're not gonna be able to support what they've built with this other money?
I think the thing about nonprofits too, it's community driven, and if they reach out to their community, they could probably raise the money pretty quickly. It's similar to the grant opportunities that they're waiting to find out if they're gonna get the grant or not.
Right.
The same thing with a nonprofit, but I think if you have it coming a little bit lower, it gives them at least a chance. And I think we have one nonprofit? One.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're talking about one. Yeah, we're talking about one organization here.
So I'll just pose a question, that taking the nonprofit out of the new development category, we've got overall 65% proposed match with a range of 48.5% to 80%. Is setting it at 50 a bit low based on what's already been stated. I wouldn't say it should be 80, but clearly we're at 65% already, so why undercut that if that's the commitment?
I would concur with that. I think that, if we're gonna start talking, and I almost wish you had a flow chart going here, because I've heard that things go out and I've been trying to jot them. But it's like, it would be great to have a poster board here with these on there so we can visually see them. The 50% should be the minimum. And if you want to do a preferred, it should be higher, because literally you do have, you took the average of these, you're above 60 easily of those private. And I think that's showing, and would be excellent when they go to the state level and showing that there is that private investment which the state really wants to see.
So would you propose like 50% minimum, 70% preferred
Good.
on private?
That's what I'm referring to, yeah.
You got a good point, we're already at 65.
I don't know about you saying it, just.
Maybe
cost more.
It's preferred, you know, you don't have to hit it, but.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's like the DRI number that's typical, is the 60-40 as well, so. The New York forward communities are a little different, and so that's why you have the ability to play with those numbers, but you're right, the investments proposed to date are aligned with that 64. We're talking about the reverse.
Right.
60 is the requirement, right, you're flipping it around, right. You're right. You're right, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Could you define nonprofit for me? 501c.
501, yeah,
C3.
C3.
There are 3 on this list.
That's what
C3 none.
So, that's what, Civil Lodge and the Veterans Club of
The
nonprofits.
Veterans Club,
Right,
the VFW, and the American Legion of both nonprofits.
correct, those are as well.
All right, so I'll throw those back into that category and see you guys revised.
And those two that are on the small project list at the moment, but if they were to be elevated, they would meet a different potential standard.
I would support the mayor's suggestion, 50% minimum, 70% preferred. And again, I think at the end of the day, it just allows us to, the large group is going back to these groups, it allows more of these projects to move forward because it spreads the money further.
Is there anyone opposed to that threshold or want to take a poll?
50 or 60?
50
50 minimum, 70 preferred. That doesn't mean they need to be somewhere between 50 and 70, or more than 70.
Right.
There's one on here that's already 80.
I'm curious though, so does this get written in the strategic plan to the state? So is the state looking at those thresholds as well and then sort of bench the projects against that? Or is it just sort of an internal rubric and that when we propose to the state in the strategic plan, we're saying a minimum of 50 and then they're gonna look at who makes that? Because I don't want to sort of start cutting too much if all of a sudden we say, we have good projects that are in at 60%.
So we're gonna have an evaluation tool where we will then be able to say, does it meet the minimum of the 50 or the preferred, and be able to move it on essentially a yes, these projects are to move forward, no, these projects are not, as we advance them essentially. For the entire evaluation criteria, so this will be one of the tools.
So what you're suggesting is that it would be 50 minimum, 60 preferred?
Yeah,
Something like that.
I think I'd do 50 and 60 preferred. I just think 70 starts to get, and again, you're right, a lot of these are already meeting that benchmark.
Right.
We're splitting hairs really, I mean, I'm not.
70 sounds high. And maybe
Well, 60 also ties, it's better than the downtown revitalization state standard. And we have a bunch of projects already there, so that's okay with me.
I just don't want to tell the state that we're gonna do something and
Yeah.
then we sort of have hands around ourselves.
Understood, really good point, Karen.
So we'll be 50, 60.
50, the 60 preferred, everyone agree? Any Anybody opposed? That's for private. Public. So right now, we've heard 0, we've heard 30, 20 to 30, and we want that flexible with grants.
I guess I'd like to throw out 10%, some skin in the game, so that they wind up really being sort of benefiting the community as a whole. I mean, I know that's the intent for these, but I think that some municipal skin is worth the conversation.
How likely are some of these grants?
I'm sorry?
How likely are some of the grants?
So from,
I think a couple are kind of likely. One is a Parks grant, and it was submitted in a prior year, and the feedback was you had 2 open Parks grants. One being the skylight on this building, and the other being a planning grant. We closed those, and once you close those, the Parks they'll be much happier, shall I say. The Hoffman Lane, we have applied for a green infrastructure grant project. Those are wonderful grants. That was actually one of the grants that we got for Main Street a number of years ago that enabled the rain gardens. It's green infrastructure. There are 10. We would have to pay 10 of eligible green infrastructure components. There might be some additional amounts. Those are the only 2 really that we have submitted funding applications for.
from a process standpoint, the state will talk with those agencies, knowing that they are a New York Forward community, and determine all those funding awards and change the amounts that might have been presented in the plan. But it also gives the village an opportunity to add more to that project, to not just focus on green infrastructure, but to be able to do more pedestrian elements or lighting elements, more connectivity with the lake. So it gives them an opportunity to fund things that wouldn't have been eligible under that grant too.
The requests, for the public projects, correct me if I'm wrong, are under the assumption that there is no alternative funding. Right? Funding amounts are
Correct.
based on total project cost, not the cost share were an application to these.
That's correct. What? We did not show a green infrastructure match to the project to date, just in case it is not awarded.
Under other committed funds. That's just the difference between the two.
It had a little asterisk in the PowerPoint.
Insurance fees was 30% preferred, but I can't remember off the top of my head, Nicole, what the public projects came in as. Did they come in with a match in Sharon Springs? I think they did a little, there was something, but I don't remember.
Very minimal. They did not have much match.
And Dolgeville has multiple public projects, one of which has a match and the rest don't. And they have a 0%.
One thing to think about, we wouldn't even be in this room if the village hadn't written this grant with certain projects in mind. And we're glad we've opened the doors, but do keep that in mind. And number 2, we aren't matching public with private. We're matching public with public, because our revenues are taxes, etc. So it's coming from one pocket to the other, but we are public, and it's not in any way private benefit. It's for the public good.
And I'm just, this is more of a conceptual statement, real specific thing is, if we feel the most impactful catalytic projects are private, I'm not sure we feel that way, but if we do feel that way, we feel the public projects are not as impactful. What is that mix? Like, what are those matches that mirror that vision? I don't know the answer. I said, if we assume that getting 40 units of year-round housing
is important and the most important. What are the matches we create?
Right, so we will have an evaluation tool, we'll go through that momentarily, that will have other rubrics that would
Right.
allow that to really be above the, think of it as a line, does it meet enough of these to be a yes, or enough of these to be a no? So we're not gonna score them, we're not gonna have a ranking per se, we're just really looking to understand what projects meet that minimum to move forward. So we're at a new proposal 10 for skin in the game for public projects. Any others, or all in favor?
Would that be a requirement or a?
And it could be a preferred.
Preferred.
Oh, it wasn't, it was just another offer.
I know, just another opportunity. Just keep the conversation going. So we have a 0, a 10, a 20, and a 30.
Red option.
Yes.
The 15's right.
15's right in the middle.
It's 15, if we make it preferred,
15 preferred.
then, you know, because with any of this, I mean,
That's an extra fight.
we could spend the whole grant on public.
15 preferred,
So,
10 preferred.
And
10.
let's say that.
I'm still at 0, but I'm not gonna fall on my sword for it. I agree with the mayor, like, they're matching with public money. Like, it's matching with public money with public money.
Yeah, right.
And at the end of the day, when we advance this slate of $8 or $8.5 million to the state, like, the state is gonna decide what's impactful. And if we've hamstrung the village to not be able to do the project because of the match requirement, we may have done ourselves a disservice.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be, I wouldn't think the state is gonna go through here, if we advance all of these village projects, they're not gonna pick all municipal projects, it's not gonna happen.
Right.
There's gonna be a mix of public and private.
Right.
I think, I just don't wanna hamstring the village,
That's right.
like, to not be able to move forward with the project. I think for a project like Doubleday, like, if Friends of Doubleday can create the match, then that's not, that's not.
I'd love to.
Then that's not public money, but I struggle with public money matching public money, it just seems weird.
Okay, yeah.
It's just but like I said, I'm not gonna follow this.
Yeah.
It's, uh,
There, make
Any other offers? It could be a 0 minimum and a 10 preferred. And there will be some, I would anticipate some costs not being eligible, just as far as grant administration. Soft costs might not be, and so the village may have expenses anyways that they would have to put in, and that would count as a match, but and it's possible they may even be able to do some in-kind services as part of that, but just gotta keep that in mind. So maybe 0, 10? 0?
0, 10 is fine.
10 preferred.
0 to 10. All right, anything different for nonprofits?
I think it should be the same as nonprofit, 0 to 10.
Any others? Originally, we had heard, I have 25, 30, 20 to 30, and then 10 to 15, and now we're at 0 to 10.
I'd like to see a little something for nonprofits, partially just based on Ken's observation. The fact that they can't come up with anything, I would, I don't know.
I know, but, I'm sorry. Very good.
Right, so only other piece to say is a nonprofit can fundraise as well, so there's an opportunity for some fundraising that can be done, but it's kind of understanding some of the natures of the nonprofits that are out there as far as what we have presented to.
I'm fine with a low requirement, but maybe just a preferred number.
Any others?
I'm assuming there will be some conversation, or can there be a conversation with the nonprofits about the higher this number is, the more attractive this is going to make your application, not so much to this group, but to the state. Like, because they want to see these dollars leveraged.
Yeah.
So like what I'd hate to do is we can set a low requirement, that's fine, but I think there should be some conversation or guidance, like, hey, if you can put in 10% or 15%, it's gonna make the project more attractive when it goes to the state level, because ultimately, we're not the final decision makers. I just don't want somebody to get shafted because we set the number low. That's all. I totally understand where you're coming from.
I think when you add that term preferred, that's the message. Is for them to talk to their funders to be like, the more money we raise, the more likely we're gonna get this improvement. And obviously, I'm sure you guys will dig deeper into their applications too, to make sure feasibly that they can do this.
Exactly. Well, and it's sort of a part of that, if the application goes in asking for $400,000 and we're a year down the road, I mean, the project's $500,000. I mean, they're not getting $500,000, they're getting the award amount. So just by default, we're gonna wind up putting some in.
And they have to fund the project entirely upfront anyways.
Yeah, it's really good.
So a 0 with a 10 preferred, or we keep that number up? All in favor? Any opposed? And then we have the small project fund we have 350s and 130.
That's just a recommendation, because we don't
That's
actually
just a
set that.
Just a recommendation.
Yeah, the programmatic would be 25% minimum, and it would be established later by the group that's administering that. So it may not even be worth, talking about, because we're gonna have to talk to all those people about that 25% match anyway.
Yeah.
So,
But I assume that's gonna knock a lot out.
good, yeah. Well, I mean, that typically happens with those programs, people are interested, and then when the match
Right.
comes out, they,
Why was that piece not put on the application?
because we elected prior to the open call to not set a match requirement ahead of time so that we could keep the projects to one that we're having.
Do you, it feels like we might have run the risk that people in good faith put things in and, we throw out the secondary level, but,
It's sort of hard to have that, because then that would have been across the board, you can't really differentiate.
Okay.
I mean, you could have, but it's ultimately up to this group to differentiate with those projects. So.
And the other thing to keep in mind as well, so if we do have, we have a long list of small projects, and we're going to see if any of those can move into the private category.
Right.
We've already set a minimum of 50 for that category, so if they are looking to elevate, they'll have to do more anyways. So keep it at the 25 and then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So the project evaluation criteria, so you all should have this little project evaluation worksheet. This is an evaluation worksheet was presented to Sharon Springs and Gulchville, and so we took their comments into consideration. So you guys are seeing a relatively vetted criteria. That doesn't mean that it's perfect for you all, but I just want to run through it. And the purpose of the criteria is to kind of look at how these projects are aligned and catalytic and feeding the goals. And so the evaluation criteria breaks out into categories. The first is whether or not it meets the New York Forward program goals. Those are separate from the goals that we presented today. Those are programs for the New York Forward, goals for the New York Forward program itself. The next category is looking at the specific Cooperstown, New York Forward area goals. It says goals and strategies, we've listed the goals
Right, and I will say Dolgeville went and they added all the strategies as well. So it's something that if you want more of a rubric, we can add more. They felt that that deeper dive was important to them. Sharon Springs did not.
Similarly, local and regional support criteria, in terms of the local plans, the regional plans, and public support.
On this one, Dolgeville went very specific with a plan that they had and was looking to see if a project was specifically called out within that specific plan. So they left one line item for local plans, and then they called out this very specific plan to see if it fit. So if there's something that makes sense to you that way, to really assess it as a tool.
For instance, the comprehensive plan, Dolgeville used the
The
BOA
BOA
plan,
plan.
the brownfield.
How many projects did they have?
Theirs was less than yours. You have the most of that.
You guys have a lot to get through.
I want to say like 19 all together. 19?
I mean, I was sort of betting it over and over again.
Right.
The
It
other
does.
option would be that we can, of course, provide you with summaries of the plans, like the regional plans, the local plans. We can provide you with that as kind of an addenda, so you have something to refer to, and it's not just like a blank, you know, unknown. Okay. So that would be something, yeah, that can be something we can do. Just as a note, number 14, adequate level of public support, that's where, public workshop number 2 is going to come in to play. And then project readiness criteria, looking at if the project has a clear path to site control, any regulatory challenges, you know, site plan review, SHPO review, things of that nature. The capacity to actually implement their project, as we were discussing during the match discussion. The project has the ability to break ground within 2 years of the award. Those are some criteria that may indicate project readiness. It's not all of the criteria, you know, you guys might think of something else. Positive benefit criteria is looking at that transformative catalytic potential of the project. Affordable housing is pervasive among all 3 communities, so we included that. And anticipated community and economic benefits associated with the project. And then last but not least is the funding criteria, whether or not there are alternative funding sources available for the project. The project has the potential to leverage additional private or public funds, and the project meets the preferred matching funds for its project type. So that's where this, you know, base preferred match would come into play.
So again, this can be edited, things can be taken out, things can be put in, things can be modified.
Are we gonna define affordable?
You certainly-
That came up, yep.
My notes from Sharon Springs.
It's probably a different affordable than Main Street.
It is.
So I mean, it's a relative affordable, not a HUD or a market rate, or, I mean, so you're not putting in like CDBG.
I think that's a question for the FNC.
Right.
What would you consider?
I believe Sharon Springs was looking at the HUD affordability as kind of the general discussion that they had, but it could be 110% of the market. It could be kind of a varying number as well.
Will we know that information from the project itself?
We are going to get that information from the project sponsors to really understand what types of units they're proposing and be able to evaluate that.
Yeah, so one thing about using a sort of regulatory standard for that is there's real. So they have to meet that continually into the future. If you're just saying, if you're just say making up a definition of affordable, they can say that they're gonna, the apartments will be available at that rate, but it's essentially.
Yeah. I feel like if the project is checking the box to be affordable, I feel like we have to have a benchmark. Otherwise it's not possible.
The other question I have for you all is if, I guess there's a housing there's a housing goal, but, so in terms of making sure that it's, you know, you guys are looking at both whether or not it's contributing housing at all, and whether or not that housing is affordable, those are kind of two different buckets, right?
Right.
But I do think we do have that housing, element in, criteria number 8. And, one of the New York Forward criteria, I'm sure. Yeah, number 7. So we can define affordable, however we will, if it's HUD, we can just
I
add
think
that.
7 and 8 cover the general thing, saying those are diversity of housing options.
Right, yeah.
Rather than, I wouldn't take the affordable.
Oh, I wasn't suggesting, yeah, just making sure that you are all comfortable with the range of criteria that's provided to you all.
I think this is exhaustive.
Good.
To go through 30.
Right, you know, as somebody, as a member of the council who reads CFA applications, like, this rubric is exhaustive. So kudos to you. I mean, I think all of this stuff is important, which is great. The only comment I would have about this is maybe assigning each one of these projects to one of the strategies, so that when we make recommendations, we're not submitting all housing projects, right? Like, so you have housing, business, connectivity, sustainability. Like, if we can just assign each project, like, as we're looking at it, like, we can all agree, oh, this is a sustainability project. Then we can at least have, when we start to work the spreadsheet, you can at least see that you have diversity of projects and we're not all eggs in one basket. I don't think it becomes an evaluation thing, it's just defining it.
One option would be in the draft vision goals and strategies that you all have printed here. If we created kind of like a 1 ABC, 2 ABC in terms of numbering them, you could easily add that in the discussion notes at the end, to be better able to keep tabs on that.
We can present it in a visual tool as well, to
Absolutely,
make sure.
yes, well,
Right, but I think that would be helpful to see, so that we're not just having all housing, whatever.
Right. Not that would happen, but.
No, but it'd be good to make sure we're diversified.
Yep.
So I'm hearing from you, Ken, that you don't want to add all 20 strategies.
I do not want to add, I do not want to add anything to this exhaustive list.
All right, great. We do already have write-ups for the local plans and the regional plans, so we can just provide that, I believe, to them all.
What do you mean?
The write-up, like, we've already written summaries
Oh,
of
you mean based on
the downtown profile.
Yeah, so, you know, theoretically, if you're looking at a project, you know, you're same as the New York Forward program goals and the Cooperstown New York Forward goals, it would just be, you know, we could supply you a list of relevant regional plans, and you're just looking to see if the project aligns with the goals. Or local plans, for instance, the comp plans.
Well, I guess that's already in there, as part of the rubric, so
Yeah.
get everything else.
No, it's
good.
Strike that from the record.
Well, no, specific strategies are not in there, so that's good. So we'll just give you guys kind of an appendix or an accompanying sheet that you can reference.
I can put something in there that says.
Are we anticipating for the public session that it's just these 1-pagers? So what's the public actually going to see?
The public is primarily going to see the general information about this.
Right, yeah.
It might be a tiny bit more, but essentially that.
You might take the photos.
Ken, are you suggesting that we color code the strategies ahead of time for the public?
No, I was just thinking for our thinking, but it's really, like, when you look at the Cooperstown New York Forward goals and strategies, like, very few projects are gonna check more than one of them, some of them will, but, so it will allow us to make sure we have diversity in that 8, 9, 10, 11, diversity of projects, that's all I was, you don't want like all municipal projects or all housing projects, in my opinion.
Right, and to be clear, as part of our evaluation tool, we don't need to say that it has to meet all 7 of their program goals or all 4 of the village's goals. It needs to meet at least one of those. But as we're adding up the yeses, that can be part of the conversation. Does it need more than one as a category, and how we prioritize? Right.
This is a qualitative guide, it's not a ranking mechanism for projects. So it's essentially a discussion guide to help you think about the projects, because as Ken mentioned, there's a lot of things to think about when you're sort of trying to evaluate their impact and whether or not they should be priority in comparison to each other. So this is sort of just a helpful, none of these are weighted more than each other. So that's something, you're thinking about as you go through it. It's just a contextual guide almost. Maybe you get to the end, some might have 20 yeses and some might have 1 yes, and that sort of gives you an idea, but it's gonna be more nuanced than that in reality.
Do we have more information in the one page?
You will. So we're gonna set up executive sessions to talk about each project very specifically, go through financials, go through what the project is, and be able to talk in great detail about them. But that will be part of a public meeting. So that was in a doodle poll that,
That's
yeah. To help really understand the projects.
So are there any concerns with the stuff that's here? Anything people think should change?
So I heard just clarify affordable and
Oh,
add stuff for
my
them.
God.
Pages, staples.
I don't know how you feel, Carolyn, but I know you read a lot of grant applications as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. What typically is gonna happen is you're gonna be really enthusiastic the first 5 projects, and then the rest is gonna fall off, and it's gonna be like, yeah, this looks good. So I think keeping it, as tight as we can, will be good, and I think that, right, it's gonna just wind up being a nuanced discussion. It just makes you think about the projects and how it puts in, so it's a great guide, I wouldn't overthink it.
All right. Okay, so quickly, York Forward Boundary Expansion. So of the projects that we've received, not too many were outside of the study area. The only thing is, okay. So we're looking at potentially expanding the boundary, really to just capture the upper Main Street right-of-way, come back, and capture the Grove Street right-of-way fully, to allow for those projects to be considered in full. The upper Main Street wayfinding identified points of interest at the entrance to the red lot, the intersection of Grove and Main, and then continuing down within the study area, but we just want to make sure that the full projects are captured. This was that project, 55 Grove, and that one is obviously well outside of the boundary, but I did want to, we obviously wanted to show you that. So we're recommending, this red dotted line would look to the LPC, whether you even want to make that expansion or not.
The red lines do not include the local plans. Just like that.
The red line does not include, I'm sorry? Oh, your project is on the other side of the street? I thought it was this one here. It's on this side?
I think
It is on that
It's
side.
on that side.
But it's that parcel.
No, it's,
The red line would come straight down.
Come straight down this way?
Correct,
Yep.
yeah,
So I have not, so this map is incorrect.
correct.
One of these, this parcel is actually on the other side of the street. So this is incorrectly identified. Needs to go over here.
Yes.
Okay. I can certainly make that change.
But the addition of the modification of that specific area is only adding one parcel, right?
It would add one
On this map.
on this.
So essentially, you'd just be modifying it to come down to include those 2 parcels which are technically applied, they're on the other side of the street there, and
Yes,
then bringing it over.
bring it over this way.
So we can,
Um,
I think we have one there, we can technically
I can mark it up,
mark it, so
then
we
you
all
can all see
know.
it.
Exactly. It's just the street.
This map is the current approved boundaries. I'm not sure what the parcel boundaries are exactly, but it would follow parcel boundaries. Sorry, I'm trying to make my, inline really pretty thick. Okay.
Yeah. This number 31.
This is 10. This is 11, and this is 31.
Right, so I think it's important to talk about what those projects in yellow are as well.
So, project 10 is one part of the Willowbrook residential project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then project 11 is the Railroad Inn. That's the expansion project. There are 3, efficiency units proposed there. And then, 31, was already in the project area, so, you don't have to worry about it too much, but that one is proposing, so 31 is also, is not on this, list, so I'll have to add that one. But it's not eligible because it's proposing to upgrade a curb cut, a private curb cut. It's a sidewalk improvement, it's a like private sidewalk improvement.
Can you put the map with the numbers on there?
Not in the PowerPoint, no. There's a little to do. So again, you would come down. Straight down.
If you can move back to the center of the room so we can see what you're writing on. Sure.
So the third, of those 3 parcels, the easternmost large parcel that's partly in the existing boundary.
It's not protected.
Right, that's the one, but it's also partially in the boundary.
Yes, so we don't have to worry about this guy so much. It's this one here, and this parcel here that's not marked, but it has been submitted. So this, and this would be the Willowbrook, multifamily proposal. Townhomes and apartments.
Josh?
Yes.
That's those
Yeah.
parcels.
The
So
one
it's
that-
on either side of the street?
No, the yellow one, the yellow existing is, that's just,
That's a mistake.
that's a mistake.
This should have been over here. So this is not. Okay.
But there's 2 buildings, so is it
There's
2
two
parcels
parcels.
or is there 1 parcel?
There's 2 parcels, they're both on that side of the road.
They're adjacent.
Yes.
So if you just bring the red line down and you hit Glen Avenue.
Right.
You're
That's
good.
basically, we'll make sure, essentially that's what the boundary is, but the boundary will align with the parcels, so.
Yeah, it'll align.
I think it actually, the parcel is.
It might jet out a little bit, but
So the vote would be to incorporate the Willowbrook project parcels. It would come down to incorporate, I mean, I think if we make sure that it's recorded that the vote is to incorporate the village's Upper Main Street wayfinding proposal, Grove Street proposal, and the Willowbrook apartment proposal parcels.
I make
The
that
boundary.
motion.
They're all adjacent and adjacent to each other, contiguous to each other,
and adjacent to the existing,
and adjacent to the existing
it's a
property.
relatively minor modification.
Ken made the motion.
Great.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, I apologize for the confusion. All right. So, we're actually doing pretty well, planning wise, amazingly. So this conversation can also be kind of about next steps. So, I know I mentioned before that the public workshop is scheduled for, September 13th. So that's a little more than 2 weeks away at this point. That workshop will it will take a very, very simplified review criteria and allow the public to fill in a couple of basic questions about each of the projects that are eligible. The small projects will be a project in itself. So we'll explain what the small project fund could and would fund and why it's supported by the applications that we received, depicted on a board. That's important for the LPC to get the feedback. That's a criteria on here, criteria 14. It's also a way to help kind of develop some of these projects, particularly some of the public projects, to understand what might get them kind of another leg up in the review process. But obviously we haven't dived super deep into these projects, and so the executive sessions allow us the opportunity to dig deeper into the specific issues and the kind of, the financials of particular projects that may be a bit sensitive. So we wanted to make sure to get to at least one working group meeting before that public workshop, so we can make sure that any projects that are really not eligible come out of that list of things that we're presenting to the public, and that we have our kind of marching orders in terms of reaching out to project sponsors for more information that the LPC feels is needed, and so we get a leg up on that. The next couple of LPC meetings will be kind of working through these projects and how they are incorporated into the SIP. So it's really going to be a busy next couple of months of meetings. The working group meeting, since it's not open to the public, we could do a virtual or hybrid meeting. So if the village wanted to organize, having a camera here and having a couple people here, we can also join from your house, and we'll open up a Zoom on that. We sent out a doodle poll. I think most of you responded. It looks like Wednesday the 29th, or the 30th. Wednesday the 30th or Thursday the 31st works for most people. I think I would suggest Wednesday the 30th to give us a couple of days afterwards to get our ducks in a row and prepare for the public workshop. So does that work for everyone?
It's really hard at this time because it's the opening of the school year.
Yes.
So we have faculty, new staff orientation, board meeting,
Okay.
and what time are you proposing?
The same time slot that we typically meet from 4:30, or starting at 4:30.
The 30th, I can be work at 4:30, I just have to end early.
Okay, great, awesome. So I'll send you guys out the information ahead of that meeting, so we'll make sure that we're all able to get on that. And if people need to meet, I can talk to the mayor about a hybrid if that makes sense for LPC members. We can talk about that on offline, or if you want to just,
Most of the people responded and said they could make Wednesday, the 30th.
Yes.
It wasn't like, they said they could make that date,
Yes.
so they could make it in person. Sometimes, my experience with the hybrid or the Zoom meetings is they're not as useful as turning and looking and discussing things with people.
Right, and it is a lot of paper as well, so we can do that in person if that's easier too.
Are you planning to supply us with the applications before that meeting, or is that the first time you will see?
We should talk about that. I think we should I would prefer providing you all with it ahead of time. I currently have a binder that's this thick, and I don't think you all want
We
that.
just need to
Yes,
figure out,
fine.
right, figure out a way to electronically put it into something that you can digest in advance of that meeting.
And how many are you looking to go through every project in that 2 hour?
We don't really have 14.
I think
We have 14 main projects, and then there are a handful of the small projects that we'll discuss.
Yeah, I think that, to me, what is a bit important to get figured out on the front end, pre-public meeting number 2, is just going through these small projects and figuring out if any of them get kicked up to the new development rehabilitation private projects, or kicked out of the small projects, because then we would want to make sure that they get a board at the public meeting.
And we will have those conversations with those applicants as well, just to see if, now that we've set the match, should be able to make sure that even if we as a committee want to move them up, that they want to be moved up to that category. It may just be something that's not feasible for them. So we have a lot of legwork to do over this next week in order to make all this conversation happen, but that's a big piece of the puzzle.
So we'll set that on the agenda, on the calendar. And then similarly, we are getting ourselves together for open house number 2. We would like to basically do the same thing we did last time in terms of, once we have the flyer finalized, getting that out to you all so you can get it out to your networks. We'll give you a blurb so you can email that out to everyone that you know, and then we'll send out a sign-up sheet so that we can have LPC members present for that. And that's going to be a shorter chunk of time. We based the time from noon to 4 on when it was most active at the last workshop. Noon to 4 was just.
And interestingly, the last time we did it from 12 to 8, we did not have anyone show up after 4.
Yeah. Right. So that's what, yeah, so that was the basis for the shorter.
We had some great conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very unique, that was the window that was more preferred, but that's what we catered to for this one as well.
Yes. And we're looking at LPC meeting number 4 to be held on September 23.
That's a Saturday.
That's a Wednesday. Do you have the Wednesday?
I probably have the wrong.
27.
27, I'm so sorry. All right, I'll change that. So 27.
Essentially, 2 weeks after our public workshop, we'll come back, we'll talk about all the project feedback we got, continue the discussion on all of our projects, and start the evaluation process a little bit deeper as well.
So,
When is our recommendations ultimately due to the state?
Ultimately, the draft SIP is in November, so we have our final LCC meeting at the end of October. Like November 15th is when it's due.
okay. Do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns
On the LPC,
from the LPC?
before we move to public comment. I'd like to just emphasize really quick that those work sessions are not decision-making, they're exploratory, so any decision-making, it's basically, they are essentially there because there's so much to do, we just need more time. And in addition to that, there's some information that is not appropriate for the public, like probably financial information, for instance, so that is covered in the work sessions. And that's going to inform the decision making that happens at these meetings.
With no LPC, we can open it up for the public. And then, just to follow our rules of engagement, just you can say your name, where you're from, where you live, and we have about 3 minutes. Per person. I'm sorry. Everybody go. Anyone first, or? Can you just say your name and address?
Mike, Margaret, and I live at 28 Air Street.
Thank you.
And just, are you going to still allow vehicular traffic down Upper Lane?
It has not been proposed to be eliminated, but it is proposed to be an enhanced public space.
There's, you know, that have, the only parking we have is excess.
Yeah, we're. But that would be a project presented, just to add, a project presented at the public workshop in which those type of comments would be appropriate to see if it makes sense as it's designed. What could be enhanced, what could be like, not like.
Which means if you're, I think from what I read on that project, there's no through traffic. So if you're accessing parking from Hoffman Lane, that's not through traffic. It's, I think what they were trying to eliminate was people driving from Main Street, taking Hoffman Lane as a shortcut to Lake Street.
I don't know that that was actually proposed though.
I don't
The
think
design.
we would be able to do it because it is a street, it is one way and there are businesses. and-
Basically, the design would discourage, people cutting through or not cutting through. It would still be, the people who know that it's there, who have access to it, would still be.
Oh, no, real slow.
Right, exactly. That's the idea.
But it would be still available to, like, and I'm speaking for Pioneer Alley as well, which I know is sort of on the back burner because there's so many building owners there, private building owners, service.
Ellen, it's Ellen Pope.
Oh, I'm sorry,
and-
Ellen Pope, 28 Elm Street, Cooperstown. But it's yes, it should be pedestrian, it was originally designed as pedestrian because it was designed, 150 years ago. But the reality is that service trucks do need to get back there, refrigeration trucks for the restaurant, the garbage trucks for all the dumpsters.
Right.
Delivery trucks for vegetables and meat and all of that. Farmers for the farmer's market and employees need to get back there. So there is a European concept of designing streets for all uses, where all uses are considered equally. And that's what I would encourage for places like Pioneer Alley and Hoffman Lane. It's obviously, where the human element is just as important as the car element, so it's not, the cars are in favor. I would encourage that for most of our streets, but specifically these two lanes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just don't disadvantage nonprofits, operating funds are a lot easier to come by than, like $50 donations and capital funds. Nobody wants to give capital money, so consider that when you're thinking about nonprofit projects. And usually capital campaigns start 5 or 10 years in advance. And this timeline is too short for what would otherwise be very valuable projects.
Anyone else?
Sure. Liz Callahan, 12 Maple Street, and Chair of the Historic Preservation and Architectural Review Board of the Village of Cooperstown. So this introduction to some of the projects includes demolition and or maybe significant material change in the name of rehabilitation and restoration. And making sure that we are really carefully looking at what's feasible within the village's guidelines for historic preservation, as well as what's feasible with the State Office of Historic Preservation. As the projects are weighed, or talking to the applicants in terms of that feasibility and giving them an opportunity to align more with the goals of our state model law that we follow, might be really advisable in the process. So projects aren't put forward that then come to us and say, but we have this funding to tear out the windows, demolish the building. How, kind of thinking about how that weighs in with the village's goals in terms of its historic character and properties. And it's not black and white, but I really think that those things need to be weighed as projects are put forward as well.
So to comment on that, that is part of the process. They're going to have to be able to show a clear path to be able to start and break ground in 2 years. And so part of that is getting through that review process and approval process to be able to meet those guidelines.
Not just for historic review, but for zoning, et cetera.
Right.
We will talk to OPRHP within the next few weeks about projects that are particularly relevant to them and discuss feasibility directly at the state level, and of course, a separate process of the village regulation. Okay.
But there'll have to be a clear path to that process.
And again, another vote for that Pioneer Street project from that nonprofit, and a very significant structure in Cooperstown that they are really trying to bring back from the precipice of neglect. So.
Please make sure you go to the public meeting.
Say that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, one more thing was somebody else.
Anyone else first that would like to add something?
There was one project that, the microbrewery, my concern there is the intensity of use of water. I know that, breweries, beer is 90%, 95% water. And so there is an intensity of use there, and by that measure, an intensity of use for disposal of what is, a very hot process for making beer. I know Omegang had to go through all sorts of hoops to increase their water discharge into the Susquehanna because it's just a big watershed. So it sounds great on paper, but I'm not sure it would be able to, given its proximity to the lake, to the sewer, that drains right into the lake, if it would actually be feasible in that location. So that is something that really needs to be, maybe the work group can really talk to the project owner to see if he has actually investigated that, because love the idea of microbrewery, but I don't know if it would fit in that little tiny space with the resources.
Anyone else in the public? Put it back over to our chairs.
We're wrapping up? Wow, really? I thought this meeting you'd be gaveling us out of here, eager to get on the road. Obviously, we thank all the members of the community who put in applications. I think this is so exciting for the village, this particular grant, because it is opening up doors for private investment. And I think we can see some really transformative projects that increase the housing, which is a critical part of our 2016 comp plan, and we know is a very needed thing, as well as many other projects. So I'm just incredibly pleased. I'm very pleased with the support we're getting from the Department of State. I can't imagine orchestrating or conducting any sort of process like this without all your assistance. So it's really appreciated. That's all I have to say.
That's all I have. Any other comments from the rest of the LPC? All right. We'll get you out 8 minutes early.
That'd be